Hello friends, Clage back with another video today. We're going to do something a little different today rather than a guide that's, directly about Anji or even Guilty Gear in general. I want to talk about a little bit of a different topic, something more over-encompassing about fighting games and people in general. So today this is going to be a quick chat about mentality and your mental approach to playing fighting games, whether that's Guilty Gear, whether that's another fighting game, or honestly any kind of competitive activity. So just going to do something a little different with the balance patch coming. I don't want to do any direct guides while we wait for that because we don't know what's going to change and it could be instantly outdated information. And this is a topic I've been seeing coming up a lot. So the reason I want to talk about, mentality and mental approach in fighting games is that I've been seeing a pretty healthy number of chats and posts in various areas talking about feeling burned out with Strive or feeling frustrated, especially if you're playing Anji or one of the other characters that feels a little undertuned right now. And I think something that really gets overlooked amongst the common talks about, playing all the time and learning and understanding what you're doing wrong versus what you're doing well is that one of the most overlooked things, even though I think people know it's an important part of playing these games, is that your mental status and your mental approach to how you play fighting games is arguably the single most important thing you can work on for improvement. And I want to talk about why that is and just kind of talk from personal experience about this. So I've got some footage going on here in the background. This is just various stuff, small sets or things that weren't really long enough to make an entire video about. Maybe you didn't have anything particularly interesting in the sets, but just to have something in the background, and in case you decide you don't want to listen to my dumb voice, hey, you can always mute this and check out some random, matches I played in Celestial in the background. So, but let's talk about why focusing on your mental state and your mental approach and your general mentality when playing fighting games is so important. So this genre of games is very, very cerebral, and it's easy to look at the requirements of, execution and reading opponents and, going into training mode, getting your combos down, your setups down, all that fun stuff. And those are all very important things. I'm not going to devalue the physical or practice aspect of playing fighting games. It's very important. But because these games are so cerebral at their core, your mental status and having a good approach mentally to how you play these games can honestly be worth infinitely more than just your raw skill or your execution or your ability to hit tough combos, those kind of things. The reason why that is that you've probably heard me talk about this in other videos or other things before, just with fighting games, sometimes about speedrunning and other, competitive activities, is that something you have to go to a lot when you're playing fighting games especially is your mental stack. You only have so much capacity to try and process so many factors and variables at once, right? Like when you're in the middle of a match, you can't account for every single possibility going on at every single moment. That's just not possible for anyone mentally. Even the most well-trained mind can only go through so many things at once while you're playing these games. And if you don't have a good mentality going in, and by that I mean if you don't have a healthy mentality where you can be accepting of when you fail or when negative things happen or when stuff doesn't go your way, you're making your chances for improvement go down drastically, and you're making your chances for success much, much harder to achieve. So I want to talk about this in a way, I don't want to sound preachy, because it would be really easy for me to come in and be like, look, you just need to be really positive and you need to have a good outlook when you're playing fighting games and remember, all the good stuff about these things and on all that stuff, because I completely understand that not everyone is an innately positive person. I am not an innately positive person. Very often I have to really, really focus on myself and be really careful with my mentality and my attitude when I'm playing fighting games. And I'll kind of go into that more here in a little bit. But it's really important to be able to recognize when you're playing with a mentality or an approach that does not set yourself up for improvement, doesn't set yourself up for success. These games are hard fighting games are arguably the most difficult genre to play competitively and do it well. Fighting games are very, very, very unforgiving from a competitive aspect because they're one of the few genres of games where you can put in tons of hours and tons of time, tons of effort, but if you're not learning the right things from your effort, or you're not paying attention to where certain pitfalls are, you're not approaching it from a good mental standpoint, all that time can get you very little in terms of improvement. Improvement and getting better at these games is promised to no one. There's a lot of rude awakenings for people sometimes, even if they don't intend to try and play a fighting game at tournament level, right? You enjoy the aspect of playing a 1v1 game like this, and it's fun to try and play against friends, even if it's not at a super high level, right? These games can still just shut you down because that's just the nature of fighting games. They're very complex. You have to make decisions at very rapid speeds. You have sometimes very stark execution requirements. And so it's very, very easy to fall into bad mental places. It's very easy to get frustrated and start blaming factors that don't do you any good to blame when you're playing these games. And I'm speaking from this, again, at a self-reflecting angle because I have struggled with this almost my whole life, to be perfectly honest. I get very frustrated easily. I have a temper. I am Irish-German in heritage, so it doesn't take a lot for me to get in an angry or combative mood if I'm not, checking myself regularly. And I'm a person who, like a lot of people from my era growing up, I was picked on a lot as a kid. And so I had a whole lot of back end, poor self-esteem issues that I still work out today. And I'm going to be 39 in a few months. So this is something that I'm kind of coming to you from, not as I want you all to be positive and always be happy when you play fighting games, and getting frustrated doesn't do you any good. Like, no, this isn't trying to be a preachy, do better kind of thing. This is speaking from personal experience about stuff that I know gives me problems when I play these games, and I know it gives a lot of other people problems when they play these games. But because of the innate difficulty and how much you can get beat down literally in a fighting game, it's really, really easy to fall into a super frustrated or even just flat out get tilted when you're playing these games. Like I said, I've had issues like self-esteem, taking things too personally, and I also have a very competitive personality. I always want to prove myself, not just for myself, but because I feel like I need to prove to other people that, I'm good at fighting games, or I'm good at whatever I'm doing. Because it's a mental thing that I have. It's something that I think is important, and to a level, it's one of my goals. So goals are important, but you have to be able to kind of selectively, deviate between trying to reach a goal where you want to reach a certain competitive level or reach certain accomplishments within something like competitive fighting games versus just putting expectations on yourself that no one actually has for you, and putting yourself in a position where you can get into a very fragile mental state, to be perfectly honest. Competitiveness can be very useful if it's channeled properly. It can also be a giant anchor tied to your ankles, and you're sinking down, under the ocean when you're trying to get something done. And one of the big points I want to talk about is the difference between being confident and being cocky, because having confidence in yourself in these games is super important. You need to believe that you can do the things that you need to do to excel in a fighting game. You need to believe you can hit that hard combo, or you need to believe that you can make that good confirm when it happens, or you need to be confident that you can defend against a tough mix-up once in a while. Because if you don't have any confidence, then it's really easy for you to get steamrolled, because all it takes is one bad moment in a round. Maybe you have a trade that goes really poorly in your favor, and suddenly you're in bad shape. And if you're, have no confidence, then it's really easy to get into that, here we go again mentality, and then you just, fall down the downward spiral, and it's a really ugly game really fast. So, but your mental approach to these games can switch that confidence over into cockiness really quickly. And what happens when you end up being too cocky is you start blaming outside factors beside yourself for what's going on in a game. You start doing things like, when you're playing someone who's playing a strong character, go, oh, well, if they weren't playing top tier, I would have won. And that's an easy frustration to fall into, and I completely understand it, especially right now in Strive, where, my content is pretty much solely focused on Anji, and it's pretty universally agreed upon that Anji is not one of the stronger characters in the game. We can debate how weak he is or isn't, but there's a noticeable gap in what he appears to have as a ceiling in terms of kit and opportunity versus other characters in the cast, right? So I totally get that mentality of, someone just playing this character with really good buttons and super easy mix-up and all this stuff, and, that's why they won. And that's a really dangerous attitude to fall into, because the first thing that a bad mental attitude and bad mental approach in fighting games will get you is it will get you into making non-stop excuses for why you're not succeeding. You'll start blaming everything but yourself. You'll start going, oh, well, that character's just broken, that's why I can't beat it. Or my character doesn't have the tools to win, all this kind of stuff. And even if those statements might have some truth behind them, they don't do you very much good, because all that's going to end up happening is, instead of looking for how to get better, how to get stronger and improve, you're just going to use it as a crutch for why you're not doing as well as you think you should. And there are certainly limits. Like, there are fighting games out there, and Strive very well end up that way before balance patches and stuff start happening, where there are certain characters that just are not equipped to compete at the highest level against the strongest characters. That's just a fact of fighting games. These things are not always, finely tuned balanced where every character can go deep in a big, high-level tournament. Like, sometimes that's just not real, and you have to accept that. And one of the things you have to accept is that if you are playing a weaker character, no matter what the situation is, if you're losing to stronger characters, you can't take that away from your opponent, because you both went to the same character select screen. There were both the same options to both of you. They just made a choice, and they're playing a character that's more effective. And that's perfectly okay. And it's also perfectly okay for you to be frustrated by that, but don't let it get to a point where it prevents you from getting better at the game, from competing, from enjoying the game, because one of the most important mental aspects is to remember that these are games. These are video games. They are meant to be fun more than anything. And that can get lost very easily, especially when you're playing competitively or trying to enter tournaments or stuff like that. But unless you are one of the very, very few people out there who happen to be able to do this and play fighting games for their job, whether it be through playing for, a competitive team and being, paid to compete, whether you do it through content creation, whether it be streaming, that sort of thing. These things are not meant to be a job. These are not meant for you to try and go into them every single day going, I have to get better, I have to improve, I have to do these things. If you have goals you want to meet, if you want to improve, that's a good, healthy mentality to have. But don't let it turn into a world where you're like, I have to win. I have to win at all costs, and if I'm not winning, I have to figure out why that is. And I'm working really hard, and I'm doing all these things, and so it's got to be other factors that are out of my control, or things that don't play fair, in my opinion, that kind of thing. Those mindsets are super easy pitfalls to get into with fighting games. And what can happen is, when you start getting into those mindsets, you go in with a severe disadvantage no matter what kind of level you're trying to play at. If you start thinking these ways and start letting these ideas creep into your mind, pretty quickly you're going to start playing either angry or tilted, or you're going to start playing stubbornly because you want to prove a point, maybe not even to anyone. There might not be anybody watching you play, or no one's going to know certain sets you played. And you'll just start playing obstinately because you're like, no, I can overcome this nonsense even though you're playing a super good character, blah, blah, blah. Those mentalities happen a lot, and I am super, super guilty of these things. I can get really frustrated and really upset playing easily with these games because it's so easy to start getting in this mentality of like, oh my god, I can't believe this guy mashed, or oh my god, I can't believe I got thrown out of that. This is so nonsense. Those kind of things. But the thing is even though there is a certain level of catharsis with letting out that kind of frustration and blowing off steam and all that, it's not conducive to long-term success in these games. It's not even really conducive to short-term success in these games. And if you take some time to really focus on yourself and really focus on trying to approach fighting games with the mentality of, even when bad things happen, that's not necessarily a bad outcome, because you can learn so much from failure and so much from losses in these games that will bring you a lot of long-term improvement and success, that it's okay to just try and let that stuff go, to try and focus on, all right, yeah, I'm playing a matchup where I don't feel very powerful. I don't feel like my character has the same tools to compete. But how do I make the most of it? What can I do? How can I make myself better at certain aspects? Because no matter what game you play or what character you play, there's going to be situations and matchups where it's not in your favor. The situation doesn't tilt towards you. You have to make some, difficult decisions or even some guesses sometimes to succeed in these kind of games. And having an attitude of, all right, well, this is a problem. What are my potential solutions? How can I work on being better at X, Y, and Z, even if it doesn't result in wins or even if it doesn't result in really good-looking rounds or stuff like that? There's so many ways to take little steps and make little goals while keeping a much more healthy mental approach to these things that will do you so much more good over the long term of playing fighting games. And I have gone back and forth with this for the 19 years I've played Guilty Gear. I have definitely been one of those people that gets uppity and gets annoyed when I don't play well, but I always have a tendency to want to try and be like, well, it's my character isn't as good, or this matchup is really brutal, or stuff like that. And I know better. Like, I've learned this stuff long ago, but it's not that easy, even when you know you're falling into a bad mental place, to not do it. You have to really take time and effort to check yourself and check some of your attitude problems at the door to succeed in these things long term. And I think another major thing that comes up with especially a game like Strive that's very new, it's very much the big thing in fighting games right now because it's so new, because it had such big built up as the new entry in a major franchise, and obviously being one of the first big releases to have really good netcode so that everyone could play it around the world more reliably, is that it's really easy to get caught up in the gotta grind, gotta have good drive mentality. If you're not grinding, you're not trying. And that's a mentality that is toxic, not just for fighting games, not just for video games, but just life in general. The idea of needing to constantly put in time and effort and hours, otherwise you're not showing enough dedication to be a successful player. Like, that stuff's all nonsense. Obviously, the more time you put into something, the better you will get at it. That's just basic human fact. If you put time and effort into something, you will get more familiar with it. You will get better at it in some way, shape, or form, as long as that time is remotely productive. But it's really easy to get to that point where you get, sucked into the, rise and grind. Let's go. Got to get better. Got to work on this. Got to improve. Got to play, a first to 10 4 times a day with these players, or I'm not putting in enough effort. Like, don't get caught up in those rat races, because those kind of things are so unhealthy and so detrimental to long-term success that you got to be able to let that kind of stuff go. It's really important to just accept that it is 100% okay to take breaks from these things. You don't need to play if you're feeling burned out. You don't need to turn on Guilty Gear or whatever fighting game you're working on every day and get in matches or get in the lab and practice stuff every single day. Some days you're not going to feel like playing these kind of games. Some days you might not feel like playing a video game, period. And it's just as important to give yourself a break and give yourself time to give your mental standing a chance to recover as it is to put in that effort and practice and play matches and learn from what's going on. It's all part of, the bigger balance kind of thing. And I know that's really cliche. It's really easy to be like, oh, well, you got to have a good balance to succeed. But that's a cliche for a reason. It's because it's true. And, if you're like me and you easily fall prey to getting into, a bad mental place or a bad mental status when you're playing these games, one of the best ways to exacerbate that is to play out of obligation instead of out of the desire to play and enjoy the game. And it's something I see a lot of people fall into for a pitfall, because especially with a game like this that's very new, where a lot of people are learning at the same level, they're coming in at the same part of the starting line. There's a lot of people that are feeling like they're seeing more success or more growth in playing something like Guilty Gear with rollback netcode than they ever have with any fighting game they've worked on. And that can get very addicting. You're seeing these improvements, you're seeing levels of growth in your play and your ability to compete. And you want to, continue that. You don't want to back off the gas, so to speak, because you're like, oh, well, if I don't play every day, then I'm going to fall behind everyone else. And that's just not true, for one. And two, again, if you start playing and grinding out of obligation, you're going to end up, one, not enjoying what you're doing. And if you don't enjoy the game in the first place, you can't possibly have a good mental approach to it. That's just not realistic to do. But more to the point, you're just going to end up playing worse, because now you're setting yourself up for compound problems. You're playing out of obligation. This is going to put you in a less positive mental status. And so you're going to play worse. And then when you play worse, that's going to compound upon itself, and you're going to get into a very quick downward spiral. And again, I speak because I've done these exact things. I've made these exact mistakes multiple times. And I want to kind of give other people, that insight, so that hopefully you don't make those same mistakes and you can have a better overall approach to playing Guilty Gear or whatever fighting game or whatever competitive game or aspect you want to get into. So something I would challenge you to do sometime is just, when next time you decide to play or go into the lab or whatever, spend a little bit of extra time before you get started getting yourself into a good mental state. Make sure you're thinking about what you want to do to improve that day. Maybe there's a specific situation that's been giving you problems in a certain matchup or in multiple matchups. Or maybe there's a certain setup or confirm you've been trying to work on hitting more consistently. Pick some small, very achievable goals and focus on that. Make that your entire focal point of that session of playing the game. Win, lose, or whatever in between, just assess how you're doing with that, and assess honestly. When you're making improvements and doing things that you set out to do, be happy with that. Be congratulatory of yourself, and take some pride in the fact that you set some goals and you're starting to reach them, because that's really important. The more you can be proud of what you're doing and the more you can see success and bask in it, the more likely you are to build upon that and do more things that can lead to more success. So sometime when you're getting ready for the day, to whether it's going to training mode or you're going to play online or whatever, just take a little bit extra time and think about, like, what do I want to do? It can even be, the goal can even be about your mentality. It can just be something like, I want to not play tilted or get frustrated today. Frustration is part of things, but make it a goal to go, you know what, if I get frustrated, I still want to maintain a calm demeanor. I want to be focused on playing each match the best I can, and even if it goes badly or I play matchups that tend to not go in my favor, I'm just going to make the most of it and try to learn and improve in ways the best I can with what is thrown my way. So again, the reason I kind of wanted to talk about this is I've seen a decent amount of this lately. People talking about being burned out. They've been playing Strive for 2 months now, or it's getting really frustrating to try and play Anji or another character that feels like they're suffering compared to the stronger characters in the cast, or just general burnout. It's really easy right now to get burned out on things, especially if you've been like me and in a situation where the pandemic has hamstrung your ability to do damn near anything for a year and a half. and you're stuck inside all the time and not able to go out and do other things in life, these things can feel much worse just because of those outside factors. So I feel like it's important to acknowledge that there's more to being successful at fighting games than just turning it on, spending your time in training mode, grinding out matches against people online, all that good stuff. There's a lot more to it than that. And your mental approach to these games can be worth its weight in gold if you focus on it and you try to make the most of it. And so this was just something a little different. I don't know how well this video will be received. I don't know how much people will even care about my thoughts on this. But I thought a more general kind of fun approach to something that can be applied not just to Anji or not just to Guilty Gear, but all of fighting games and all of competitive aspects would be something interesting and worthwhile to talk about. And yeah, I'm a big advocate for mental health. I'm a big advocate for making sure you take care of yourself when it comes to your mentality, your mental health, and everything about it, because it's so overlooked and it's so not talked about in the ways it needs to be. And I think it would be just healthier for everyone to acknowledge that these are the kind of games that can do a number on your mental health, not just with regards to the games themselves, but overall. It's really easy to have a bad session of a fighting game, and that puts you in a bad mood for the rest of the day. That is not at all an unheard of kind of situation, especially for someone like me, who, like I said, can be hyper competitive or, you know, turn everything into a measurement against my own self-esteem, stuff like that. So just kind of wanted to give something that's a little different. Again, I'm not trying to preach. I'm trying to share from my own personal examples and my own personal shortcomings when it comes to this aspect. Keeping a good mentality is hard. It's really easy to tell people, you know, be positive, learn from your losses. You know, you learn a lot even when you're failing. And that's all very true, and it's going to remain true. But it's also easy to just overlook that not everyone gets over frustration, gets over these things quickly. Everyone's mentality and everyone's personality is different. And if you're like me, it can take a lot more conscious effort to not fall prey to these, you know, poor mental state pitfalls than it does to just say, today I'm going to be better. Like, it's easy to say it. Putting it into practice is infinitely more difficult, and acknowledging that and starting at that base of, okay, this is going to be hard, but of course it is. I'm playing a fighting game. Fighting games are hard, and that's part of what makes them so fun, and that's what makes them so addicting, because when you do succeed and you do find yourself making growth and making improvements, it feels great because you're overcoming a very difficult obstacle, and that is, you know, one of the most natural enjoyments you can get out of anything in life is just overcoming something difficult to succeed. So hopefully this sparks a little bit of thought and gives people, you know, something to look at next time they get ready to jump in and play online. You know, we're going to have a lot of changes upcoming and interesting things coming down the pipe for Strive, and of course other fighting games coming down the pipe as well. So just a topic that was been on my mind for a few days based on a lot of stuff I've seen in social and on Discord and other things. So I thought, you know what, rather than just put out another set of match videos, because it's been kind of hard to get sets that I really want to commentate or stuff right now, because I think a lot of people are waiting for the balance patch, I figure, you know what, let's do a more general talk and something that no matter what changes with upcoming versions of Strive, it's still going to be worthwhile advice, and something that I can say, hey, this was not canceled out by a brand new update to the game. So again, this is like all my stuff. It's very off the cuff with some brief notes and script writing. Hopefully it's not too corny or not too annoying. You know, if this isn't your thing, totally understand. This will not be for everybody, but just felt like it was a topic worth addressing for a little bit. So hopefully you enjoyed, got something out of this. Appreciate you letting me ramble here for a half hour on a not as interesting subject as people probably come here for. You know, I know most people want to see new tech or get advice on how to play Anji better and stuff, and don't worry, there'll be plenty more of that. This is not going to be a replacement for upcoming guides or anything, but just wanted to do something a little different while I wait for the updates and get ready to, you know, start focusing on whatever's going to change and the other topics I want to cover in the form of guides and those sort of videos upcoming. So I should have another commentated set coming out in the next day or two. So look forward to that. And in the meantime, I'll keep the regular just updated match videos coming and have the new stuff as soon as we get some more announcements, which I expect probably this weekend with Evo. So as always, appreciate all of y'all with the support and the feedback. Appreciate all the likes and the new subs. That's been really cool to see. And as always, hopefully you enjoyed and can take something away from this. So until the next one, please take care of yourselves, be good to each other, and I'll catch you next time. Later.